Well, looky what we got here. Good morning, or is it afternoon yet? It's about noon, whatever. Got a late start today. We got ourselves kind of an orchid that I wanted to see for quite a while. Got a few things to say about this guy. I think it's going to be an interesting episode. So what you're looking at right in front of us is a species of whorled Pogonia. This is one of two species in the genus Isotria. This is Isotria verticillata. Okay, this is the Large Whorled Pogonia, and he's not too small there. Real wild looking flower. We'll get into it. So cover a little bit of the taxonomy here. So this is, let me give you a little bit of context. So I guess context will come with taxonomy here. So orchids, right? You know orchids. Orchids are split into 5 subfamilies. The vast majority of those, something like 20,000 species. Of course, you know, orchids are the largest family of flowering plants by number of species. Something like 28,000 recognized species, something like 800 genera. It's a very diverse group of plants. Even here in New England, which is, you know, not exactly a biodiversity hotspot, we get about 65 species, you know, throughout the region. Maybe more, maybe less, depending on taxonomic schemes. But they are fundamentally divided into 5 subfamilies. By a, you know, staggering margin, the majority of species are falling into the Epidendroideae. What you call it there, subfamily, which is, you know, epidendroids, epidendroid upon trees. You know, those are your tropical epiphytic orchids. We get Epidendroideae here in New England, a handful of species like Neotia bifolia, for example, which will be covered in an episode that comes out before this. Corallariza trifida, which again will come out in an episode before this. Those are epidendroid orchids, but they're terrestrial epidendroid orchids. So below that, you have the second largest family with nearly 2,000 species in it. You have the terrestrial orchid subfamily, Orchidoideae, which is, you know, a lot of your European species, like Orchis, for example, Ophrys are in that, but also, you know, some rather abundant New England genera like the majority of our orchids are in that subfamily. You get a lot of cool ones down in Australia too, but that's your Spiranthes, your Goodyear, your Platanthera, a lot of more common species, a lot of temperate species, and those all share a shared terrestrial habit. Epidendroids can be terrestrial or epiphytes. And going down below that, the next, I guess, stop down the line is Cypripedioideae, which hopefully we can talk about a bit in this video. I mean, I know for a fact we'll talk about it a bit in this video. That's the second smallest family right there. That's got about 160 in it, or 135. That's all your lady slippers. That's your, you know, Cypripedium. Well, you know, if you're in New England, you know Cypripedium acaule, which, I mean, it's growing here right now. I'm just trying to find a good looking one. It looks like a couple of them got stepped on or something. So those are your lady slippers. Those are weird because unlike Orchidoideae and Epidendroideae with their one, you know, pollen mass, the one plane, those have 2 anthers, and they're, you know, they have that really weird labellum that's very characteristic of the family. Going down below that, so now we're looking at what branched off, you know, from the evolutionary tree first. So epidendroids made it the furthest along, orchidoids broke off just before them, cypripedioids broke off just before them, and that takes us to this subfamily of orchid here. These are the vanilloids. So there's actually a few more of them than cypripedioids, but not in New England. There's only 3 species in New England. You have the 2 species of Isotria, and I do believe there are only the 2 species of Isotria, and then you have a species of Pogonia. It is worth note that both Pogonia and Isotria are in a different tribe than true vanilla, like the genus vanilla where the flavoring comes from. But as far as New England orchids go, Isotria and Pogonia are the Pogonias are, as the common name for them too, are just about as close as you're going to get to actual vanilla orchids. The smallest orchid subfamily, which is also the most basal, meaning that this is the one that broke off the earliest of the Apostacioideae. There's only like, I think there's only like a little bit over a dozen of those, and they're all restricted to like Southeast Asia, Northeastern Australia. So we get species in every subfamily, essentially, except for Apostacioideae, because you got to be down there in the Southeastern Pacific. You got to be up there in like Northern Queensland. I think they might get one like in the southern islands of Japan, China, Taiwan, that type of deal, but I know nothing about that. I am interested in what I can observe. So now that we've covered a bit of orchid taxonomy, we can talk about this plant in particular. Let's get into the anatomy of this cool plant and why I wanted to put this in a video with Cypripedium acaule. So this is not, in the grand scheme of things, a super rare orchid. All I had to do was poke around. It's not common. They're gonna obscure this if you post this on iNet. It does well. It's probably mid-tier in terms of rarity. Not quite as common as Cypripedium acaule, but also, not unheard of. It grows in this nice wooded habitat. The habitat's kind of easy to access. We'll cover that in a bit. But let's just talk about the anatomy here. So these guys have a real cool form factor. They just stick that stalk up out of the ground, come up from their little, I don't know if they've got a pseudobulb or a rhizome. I don't know enough about that. Nice little whorl of leaves, and I'll show you a plant that's really easy to confuse with this if you're looking for this whorl of leaves here. That's where it gets the name verticillata. That's where the common name whorled pogonia comes from. Pogonia ophioglossoides, its cousin in a different genus, is a little bit smaller than this. Pink flower, no, I guess it does technically have a calling leaf, but it's just got one that kind of emerges from the base of the stem. It doesn't have the whorled leaves like this does. All right. And then Isotria medialoides, which is its much rare, closer cousin in the same genus, is a significantly more rare plant. Grows a bit smaller than this. This guy's not tiny. This is maybe 10, 11 inches. My hand, I was looking at, Corolla rhizotrifida, which is a tiny little thing, and this is actually kind of a delight to film. So let's get a little bit more into the floral anatomy, because the stem and the leaves don't really have much going on here. Get a little bit closer for you. Okay, so there's that flower, and if I'm not mistaken, what we've got going on here, and I can always correct myself if I'm wrong. That's a nice thing about filming videos. You can always correct yourself if I'm wrong. So these really cool little black fringes, green to black fringes you get, these are the sepals. This plant looks real wild, and it was actually, I was here like a week or two ago, and this plant's really easy to pick out when it's still in bud. I can show you. I can put the picture up of what the sepals look like. It looks freaky, but you get these little green to black sepals coming out. Very distinctive appearance to what is effectively the calyx there. Just behind it. These are fresh, so the ovary is not swollen yet. But rest assured, this right here will be swelling up with innumerable tiny dust-like seeds if this thing does get pollinated. What you have up top here appears to me, oh, it's not fused. These are two green sepals up top. I thought they were fused, but they're not. Oh, not sepals, sorry, green petals up top. Okay. And then down below in here, you have your beautiful white, green, and brown labellum. If I am able to move these sepals aside, what you see there, all right, that's your pollen mass, that's your column. On an orchid, the column is just, the combination of reproductive organs. It's that pollen sac, and yes, vanilla does have just one sort of fertile anther. That's actually why, I guess, originally Vanilloideae was thought to be more highly, quote, more highly evolved than Cypripedioideae. But genetic analysis turned out that for whatever reason, even though, Apostacioids, I think, have the 6 stamens, Vanilloids have the one aggregated mass of pollen, the one pollinia, but then Cypripoids, for whatever reason, kind of did a reversal on that. They went back to having 2 anthers and 1 staminode, and then generally speaking, what you're dealing with on orchids is 1 stamen, like a aggregated mass of pollen, pollinia, and then 2 staminodes. That's what this has. I might be butchering that a little bit, but that's the gist of it. All right, so something's going to go in there pollinating it. It's going to get that sticky mass attached to it. It's going to take it. It's going to fly off to another plant. It's going to be pollinated, and you know, we're all going to have a lovely day. The scent on these things, I got to be blunt with you. This just smells like, it smells like vanilla. I'll get down. Here's another one over here. It smells like vanilla with maybe just a little bit of vegetation. Okay. No bract subtending the ovary, at least not one that's visible, which is interesting. And as you can see, this guy is a 2-flowered version. Most of the time, I guess these just have 1 flower per flower head. So this site right here where we're at is very rich with this. I guess this is a well-known site, well-documented, well-preserved. It's not that far out of the way. Obviously, I'm not going to give it out. We are in either Worcester or Middlesex County here. You would have seen that at the beginning of the video. But part of the reason why I'm, you know, this is actually a more common species than I thought. And I think last year I would have found it, but I looked for this about 3 weeks after this date last year, and not in this location. So I think I just missed it last year. Again, something you want to take care of. You don't want to, you know, don't want to abuse the privilege of being able to see such a cool species of orchid up close, and I mean not too far from where my silly ass lives. Yeah, so that's all one labellum there, just that bottom petal. Let's just open this up one more time. I just want to see if I could see any of the staminodes. It's going to be hard to tell. Sometimes you can't, but yeah, you can see this is all one petal down here below. Very elaborate. The labellum. I mean, is it as elaborate as a Cypripedium labellum? I don't know. So anyway, that's enough of a cut to film. This is a great plant. You guys get it all the way down Appalachia. I'm not sure if they actually get this out in the Great Lakes. I'll have to put the little population map up in. Definitely down in Appalachia. Rather common down there. Found throughout New England on sites where you have acidic soil. We'll get into the forest makeup after we talk about Cypripedium acaule, but I wanted to get the interesting thing in first. So this is a acid-loving orchid. We don't get many of them in New England. Most orchids, at least in my experience, prefer calcareous basic soil. Like, I don't know how common this would be necessarily out in Vermont, where they have a whole different, you know, cast of cool orchids that are kind of common. But I think we need to cut it off there. Before I do that, I'll just show you, you know, here's another two-headed boy right here. Here's one just unfurling, but that it looks like it won't have be producing a flower this year, maybe a fresh one. Here's what they look like when they just start to emerge. And I mean, here's one single header, not quite as far along. You know, he'll be give him a day or two, he'll be all set, ready to go. So I think that's just about all we need to talk about for Isotria verticillata. Real fascinating species of orchid. One that I've wanted to talk about basically since I got into this stuff 4 or 5 years ago, and one that I'm blessed to know is fortunately doing well at this site. It gets a lot of love here, it gets a lot of attention, and people are, you know, vested in ensuring its future. This entire path down through here, it's littered, and again, with any of these vanilloid orchids, man, I just can't believe how good they smell. So let's go see Cypripedium acaule. Let's talk a little bit about the forest makeup here. Let's maybe say 1 or 2 other things about the geology allowing for these orchids to thrive, and we'll call it there. I will just say, just because it's right here in front of me, this is coming up beneath the nice, well, not nice, but a dying American chestnut, dying Castanea dentata. See, here's the trunk that died, now rotting. And all these leaves that you see growing out of the thing are just the new flushes as it continuously resprouts from the base. All right, let's go see a Cypripedium acaule, and let's look at some of the other stuff growing around here. Okay, so what we've got here is something that should be familiar to if you're, you know, from New England, you watch the videos, maybe you do both. This is Cypripedium acaule. This is kind of the, you know, this is the famous guy. This is like the, who can you say? This is the, oh, I had a funnier joke in mind, but no, I lost it. Whatever. You get the idea. Very famous orchid, very well known in New England. You know, nothing crazy. If you 2 seconds on iNet, you'll see this thing's pretty frequently evolved, and it's easy to see why. You've got a rather charismatic flower, for lack of a better term. So this guy is in Cypripedioideae, and I mean, it's technically, again, gotta do the finger quotes, more evolved than the Isotria back there, the Pogonia. But I mean, this guy's catching your eye. My favorite thing about this orchid is whenever you bring it up, everybody likes to remind you that orchid, the root word from that comes from the Greek word for testicle, which is also why I don't really get what people still say Latin names. It is just the name. I get it, it's binomial nomenclature, but when I say Cypripedium acaule, it's not a Latin name, it's not a Greek name. That's just the name of the plant. Binomial nomenclature. Common names can be applied, like pink lady slipper, moccasin flower, whatever, and they're helpful for some people. But really, it's trust me, some of the common names are more confusing and more of a mouthful than some of the scientific names. Anyway, what we've got going on here with this guy is obviously a very large, elaborate, big, conspicuous labellum. Gap in there is what the pollinator is going to fly into. He's going to buzz around in there, and he's going to get, basically, the idea here is that it gets forced through the top there. That little lump right there, that's the anther. This one has 2 of them, unlike pretty much all other orchids. And then this right here, kind of covering the column, that's a staminode. So this would be the fertile stamen on that Pogonia. And then it has, presumably somewhere, 2 highly reduced staminodes on either side, like all of the other, orchidoids have that, and epidendroids would have that. This one does have, unlike the Pogonia, a bract that subtends the ovary, and then also unlike it, okay, so that's the bottom petal. These are your 2 lateral petals, fuzzy, very fuzzy lateral petals. I butchered it last time. So here's your dorsal sepal. Fused lateral sepals on the bottom. Cypripedium arietinum, the 2 sepals are unfused, but on most species of Cypripedium, the sepals would be fused. And then of course, no cauline leaves, hence the epithet acaule, just the 2 big leathery basal leaves. So this one's familiar. I got a whole plant spotlight. You can go watch about this one if you're really that curious. But what I'm trying to convey to you is that these are 2 woodland species that grow in, I would consider, frankly, an unremarkable habitat for the region. This one's significantly more common than Isotria verticillata. That being said, obviously these plants are pretty damn special and worth protecting. So orchids in the Northeast, the vast majority of them you're going to find bogs, fens, seeps, like mossy, calcareous areas where there's tons of nutrients, a very basic soil. However, here where we are at, everything, I'm looking at a white pine sapling, I'm looking at low brush blueberry, I'm looking up into the overstory and I'm seeing oaks. They do have maples here, Acer saccharum, and I think Acer rubrum, red and sugar maple, which are common enough species in New England. That you don't really see generally down, like as we would move closer to the coast, you get into like an oak and pine barren. It's a little bit different of a habitat with some extra characters at play here. It's also, a lush woodland that's been preserved, so you get a nice duff here. It's fertile. It's probably a little bit on the acidic side just for the pine, the oak, the blueberries. And orchids don't generally love that. Some are specialists of it, like Cypripedium acaule, but most, you're talking your calipogon, I could be getting that reversed actually. I think calipogon does like the acid. Okay, let's use an example I'm sure of. Cypripedium reginae and Cypripedium parviflorum. You're only going to get those on basic soil. Galliaris spectabilis, you're only going to get on basic soil. A lot of the really fen-loving orchids way up north, they're growing over, swamps and fens that are fundamentally underlaid by like shale, by sedimentary rock. What we've got here is we're right on a orogenic belt where a mountain range was uplifted, you know, 500 million years ago. But we're on some, like, I think this is quartzite, so it's metamorphized quartz, which in of itself was metamorphized sandstone. So at some point in the distant past, perhaps this was, you know, a sedimentary basin. But the two predominant rocks here, phyllite and quartzite, are heavily metamorphized rocks from, you know, orogenic uplift, from a mountain uplift. This is the ancient Appalachian mountain belt we're talking about. There was 3 separate ones. I can do some more research and put there what specific orogeny this rock might have been, you know, formed out of. But fundamentally, the idea that you just need to understand here is that the rock that underlays this has been buried and tortured and cooked under the earth for a very long time before, you know, subsequently being exposed. Obviously, there's no mountain range here now, but like Wachusett, you know, you go a little bit further west of here, Monadnock, some of these little weird mountains you get in southeastern New England, they're remnants of that. So the geologic situation here is not what you get, like, say, Connecticut Valley. It's not what you get in far northern New England. It's not what you get, you know, Western Mass, Western Vermont, Champlain Valley, Lower Hudson Valley. This is still that, you know, typical southern New England metamorphic, just it's a whole mishmash. And the only other thing I'll say is if you want to get even more acidic, you can get on some of the granite, you know, plutons. Like the White Mountains are a granite pluton. Different type of rock than this. That is just volcanic rock that cooled under the surface and was uplifted. This is stuff that was laid down, reburied, and cooked under the earth. So slightly different situation. Looks like you get some sort of frog legs. Or I think it's dog slobber on the leaf. There was a whole group of dogs that came by here. Real cute, but I had to stop for a second. So let's take a look around. Let's see what's growing around here. I mentioned blueberries. There you go. There's your Vaccinium angustifolium, your low bush blueberry, forming pretty much all the understory here. You indeed have, you know, white pines up in the upper story, but there's Pinus strobus, a little sapling. Ton of these, you know, old stands of Castanea dentata. There's one of your maples. And then there's mature white pines above. You got red and white oak here too as well. Let's take a look around. I got to show you one species. Double back to the Isotria. There's a Mediolia virginiana growing here, and I just want to show you how some of those two plants look. And then we'll probably get out of here and we'll head over to another spot to look at some other stuff. But real excited to make this episode. I'll have to rewatch the footage to see if I finished the joke. By the way, I was starting to say people love to see this, and they love to mention orchis means testicle. I never finished that thought. That doesn't come from the fact that the flower here looks like a ball sack. That comes from the fact that a lot of orchids have what are known as pseudobulbs in the ground, which look like testicles. Although I can't deny the fact that Cypripedium acaule, despite how beautiful and majestic and revered the flower is, it does look like a hanging pair of pink nuts. Anyway, let's go see what else is going on. Yeah, here you go. Here's a sapling of a white oak. I'm not sure if it's actually the quote northern white oak, Quercus alba, but it is a, you know, a type of white oak. Generally speaking, the red oak lobate, that tribe's going to have little fringes to the edge of the leaf tips there, and white oaks are going to be more, you know, rounded off. That's not universally true, but that's a good rule of thumb. Might be Quercus alba, might be one of the other ones. I'm probably not Quercus bicolor, but a white oak. You can do that, you know. That's a big genus, like 500 of them. Sometimes you got to narrow it down to what section of the genus it's in. Yeah, see, I don't know why it's bothering me now, but this looks more like a red maple to me. Instead of having the 5 principal, I guess, points to the leaf, it's got 3. The dentation is not nearly as severe. Much redder tinge to the pedicels. And yeah, not much else to talk about after that. I can tell readily by the flowers. That's the problem with plants. You generally go by reproductive structure, not just, you know, the vibe. But the vibe here reads more Acer rubrum red maple. Again, too ridiculously, this especially, absurdly common species in New England. This is one of the most common species of tree, just broadly in the East. But will do really, really well on acidic soil. Will do well in a swamp. Will do well as a successional species. Just a good all-rounder. A good all-rounder. I need to correct myself. So gneiss and schist are actually in the same suite of rock as this. That's slate being the base rock, the actual sedimentary rock that it starts out at, and progressing through phyllite, then to schist, then to gneiss, so the other way around. Migmatite being the most foliated. Basically, I don't know what I'm talking about, but know that this is not a not granite, not gneiss. I mean, I know what gneiss looks like because that's everywhere near my house, but I'm guessing that this is either that phyllite or that quartzite. But then again, the quartzite would have probably some grains of quartz in there, although I guess you get that. I see the mica that could be in this. Kind of covered in moss though, moss and lichen, so it's a bit hard to tell. But I'll read up on it. I'll figure it out. This is one or the other probably. Quartzite or phyllite. I'm leaning towards phyllite just because of the color. And I could definitely see how if that were to get a little bit more foliated, folded with the crystals lined up, it would look a little bit like gneiss. I'll put a picture of what gneiss looks like so you can see that. And maybe I'll just take this out if I end up being way off again. I care more. I like geology, but I'm more in tune with the plants. I haven't quite learned that to speak the language of the rocks yet. Worth knowing though. We're definitely worth knowing. Here's when you're going to see a lot in these types of woodlands. Actually, right alongside this guy too. So that's Galteria procumbens. Not much to talk about right now. Ericaceae, blooms in July. Cute little red berry that persists over the winter. Got the wintergreen oils in it. Smells delightful. And then here's another monocot. Formerly in the family Ruscaceae, now in the subfamily Nolanoideae of the asparagus family. Controversial taxonomic revision. Manthum canadense. I see it almost everywhere I go. Write it off. It almost blends into the background. Usually just looks like this. That's one leaf of it. Forms extensive clonal colonies. And I feel like I never give them a fair shake. Cool little monocot. Exceptionally common in this part of New England. Smells nice. Has some cool looking relatives. Manthum racemosum is a really impressive one. Nearly as common. And then I think I've seen Manthum stellatum. I think you get 4, maybe 5 species in New England. I've seen all of them except for one. 2 of them are common out in this neck of the woods. 2 of them are more common out in the western part of New England. And some of them like more of the riparian habit. They like it damper. This one will do fine in a music woodland. Racemosum likes a little bit wetter. And then I've seen stellatum. I'm going to get that wrong. The star-flowered Mayflower in Vermont last year. That was growing on like a sandy riverbank. So that was a cool one. Anyway, you're usually going to see this one pretty damn close to Cypripedium acaule. And in fact, as I look up, you probably can't even make that out. There's one in bud back there. I've walked through a few good patches of them. I just really want to show you Meteolia virginiana, and then honestly, we can get out of here. Well, I came all the way back around. It makes sense I found this here. So this is actually Manthum racemosum, but as you can see, needs quite a bit longer for it to emerge from bud there. This will be going off in June. Funny, I was talking about it and then you come around a corner and it's right there. Okay, let's not drag this out any longer than it has to be. I had to actually come all the way around full circle, basically back to where the pogonia was growing, just to show you an example of a plant that plant can be easily confused with. This is Meteolia virginiana. This is the so-called cucumber root. No relation to cucumber. It's actually a true lily in the family Liliaceae, sharing with pogonia that really characteristic whorl of leaves. However, you will note this has a pubescent stem that's rather thin, coming up from a rhizome, whereas Isotria has that more that thicker, more glabrous stem, no pubescence at all, and of course this produces a second whorl up here of bracts, and what's going on up in here is those little buds there. Those will be cute little tiny yellow lily flowers popping out of the top of the thing in maybe a month or so. Few weeks, maybe not that long in the grand scheme of things. And since it's right here on its way out, Lysomachia borealis is checking out for the season, and Lysomachia quadrifolia will be checking in, although Lysomachia quadrifolia likes it a bit sunnier. Nice primrose, Primulaceae. So I think on that note, we can get going over to another spot. I gotta go reshoot a video or two, I don't know. I'm gonna go back to a spot where I was checking out, where I was initially checking out, what do you call it there? Corallarhiza trifida. Much smaller and more inconspicuous orchid than either of these, but something that you don't see nearly as often. I think on that note, we'll cut it off here, and we'll get going over to there. Oh, it's the high bush blueberry. You got a perhaps Vaccinium corymbosum there too. Makes sense. It's swampier over on this side. You go up this trail here, gets a little drier, a little higher. The more stuff going on down here, a bunch of ferns. You didn't see that over the other side of this this little easement here, but whatever, doesn't matter. So there's a beautiful species of prunus here. Family's Rosaceae. This is the genus of cherries and almonds, and the thing smells quite nice. Just looking at the leaves, I don't think it's Prunus serotina, the black cherry. Maybe Prunus pennsylvanica, the fire cherry. There's quite a few of them. You know, this whole, oh god, I think Amygdaloideae is the whole subfamily there, but it's one of the woody white flowered roses. Definitely Prunus is the genus. And I just wanted to show you this, even though I'm trying to get out of here, because look at the ants. What are they doing? Are they bothering the plant? No, my friend. Look at that. See those little glands right there? Those are the extrafloral nectaries. This plant's making nectar out of the petioles to attract the ants. Why? Well, the ants make good bouncers. Look at that. You get about 4 extrafloral nectaries on each not pedicel, a petiole, and just little ants hanging out on the thing. They're gonna keep the pests away. They're gonna, you know, looks like to be especially concentrated on the new growth. That's a cool trick. Oh no, it's on all the leaves. I guess that would still be new growth though, huh? So these guys hang out. Beautiful, beautiful trees also. They're just notoriously hard to tell apart. Yeah, there they go. How about that? It's in fact coming up next to a different woody white flowered rose. This, on the other hand, though, would probably be a species of Crataegus. This is a hawthorn right here. Again, Prunus is one thing. Crataegus, I'm not even going to try. I'm not even going to attempt to give you a guess on the species on this one. I think there's like 30 of them in New England. They all hybridize. They're doing the cool spines. See, I think the old petioles drop off. They turn them into spines. Some of them can be quite aggressive, but you know, cool plants to have around. Crataegus and Prunus, white flowered woody roses, not too distantly related if memory serves me correct. If it's not Amygdaloideae, it's something else, but whatever. I'm not even going to make an attempt on the species guess with this one. Just know it's a hawthorn. It's a Crataegus. They're pretty easy to pick out, but pretty hard to get down to species. Look at those spines though, jeez.